Let me get my lipstick on.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Plano ID Exchange. My name is Karen Maxwell. I am the group leader for Real Impact Plano here in Plano, Texas. And this is Miss Gabi Lockhart polishing up her lipstick. Gabi is all over the place. Gabi is with Real Impact Wichita Falls and Real Impact Denton. She's the co-owner along with her husband, Tim, of those locations. And she also works with American Mortgage Company. So she can get the real estate investors their DSCR loans, personal loans, personal mortgages, home mortgages for their personal residence. And she can also help your tenant buyers and owner finance buyers get qualified and cash you out with their own mortgage. But she's also with Blazing Star Capital, which is a lender that has so many different loan programs available. It is absolutely crazy. Gabi, you want to talk about the one that's been burning everybody's ears, this 100% financing? You want to talk about that?
So we have a fix and flip for single family homes, not for multifamilies and not for commercial deals, okay? So I need to clarify that. And it's 100% financing, 100% on rehab, but you have a 25% profit share. So basically, make it simple.
You're giving up a 25% profit share, right?
Well, basically, simple. If you have $1,000 profit, they get 250, and you take 750 home. So it's still a good deal, You still get to. I mean, in that case, $750 out of a profit. So, so it's a good deal. I mean, interest rates are very. Thank you. Interest rates are very. I mean, you have 12 months to complete the deal. And then we can turn around and make it a 30-year fix, or you can sell it. And so it's still a good deal on the whole 9 yard. It's interest rates are less than what a hard money lender is looking into. So that's a good deal. Points are less too than some of the hard money deals that I'm working on. Yeah, it's not a bad deal.
So let's see, raisingstarcapital.com. So it's so funny, I spent all that time trying to figure out why the comments weren't showing up on our live streams.
Yeah.
They do show up. They just don't show up the day that I posted. So like a week later, I'll go back and check, and they're there. So I've been fretting over this for a while, but I figured it out. I don't know. It's just one of those things that I don't know enough about. So let's talk about that. When you and I are talking, we're often talking about, let's start with the obvious one. You can get a house with no money and no credit. You absolutely
you have to have credit. I mean, you have to have
with a loan. But when we're talking as real estate investors, we're saying, yes, you can, Roger's book, How to Get a House with No Money and No Credit.
Yeah, you can do that with Subject 2. Absolutely. Okay. Subject 2 it's a great option.
But you can't get it if you're going to go buy a house for an investment property that's not Subject 2. So then you have to either use your own cash, use somebody else's cash, which would be a private lender, use a lender, use a bank, which was also a lender, but it's a bank versus a investor lender. But then, okay, so let's say if number one, you cannot buy a property Subject 2 if it doesn't have a mortgage.
Yeah.
Very, very simple. We all the time we hear people call us and they say, trying to get this property Subject 2 and blah, 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 blah. Well, how much is the loan? Well, they don't have a loan on it. Well, then you can't buy it Subject 2. Then it's called creative financing, seller financing. You're going to get the seller.
Let me stop you right there.
Go ahead.
Also, the thing is with Subject 2, they want to do a Subject 2, but then they come and say, I need $40,000 to pay for the seller because he has $40,000 in the equity in it. Well, that's
you can't get a loan for. Well, most people are not going to lend you money on that because then that would put them in a second lien position.
Well, and the thing is, you have to explain to the seller. Basically, if you have $30,000 and the house is $300,000, you're gonna save them basically the realtor cost and closing cost.
Absolutely.
And that
Let's
is $30,000. So I had to explain that to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, now I understand." I'm like, "Yeah, you need to go on your training course because we have those subject to training calls. We have those
absolutely.
meetings. Go to
That's
those meetings. Go and ask questions. I mean, before you do a subject two and you have been through our previous training, come back, talk to us,
yep.
bring
That's
the
what we're here
deal.
for.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, we're actually doing those calls. We're doing those subject to training follow-up calls once a month. And we're recording them. So if you've
Yes,
missed any of them,
and it's really,
if you miss any,
yeah, it's really important that you follow up.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
do it.
can actually, if you missed any, reach out to me. You can email me, or you can call me.
Hmm.
Let's see, you can email me at realimpactplano@gmail.com. I think that comment may get taken off. So I did, if you give your contact information in a comment on YouTube, they'll delete it because you're not supposed to give contact information, I
That's
guess.
fine.
But
Yeah.
so email is realimpactplano@gmail.com. Or you can call me at 903-445-6023. Let me throw that up there. If you missed the calls, let's show
They're
that
recorded.
one. Say again, Gabi.
They're recorded.
Yes, these are all recorded. So if you've missed any of the subject to follow-up calls, there have been 4. I believe we've done 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Seemed like we did one in January, February, and March, but we might have done 2 in January. I can't remember. But if you missed those, let me know, and I will email you the follow-up calls. Now you have to have went to the subject to training in December or any of the previous years. Rogers actually opened it up to the previous attendees because it's a benefit for them as well.
Right.
So we're having some really great calls and going over these really basic things that just may not have clicked the first time you attended the meeting. But basically, if they have a loan and you can take it over subject to, then you have to analyze it. And Gabi, like you were saying, you have to remember in any negotiation, if a seller says, I want $300,000 for my house, and let's say the numbers are slim, remind them if they go list that with a realtor. I always estimate 9%, but 10% is pretty close. So you can say, if you list it with a realtor, by the time you pay your realtor fees and commissions, and the realtor fees and commissions and the closing cost and the title policy and the survey, all that stuff, you're looking at around 9% of the deal. So if they're asking $30,000, let's just do 10% to be simple. That's 30. If they're asking 300,000, that's $30,000 that you're going to save them. So now you're saying, okay, I'm going to pay cash and I'm going to pay all those fees, and I'm not going to get an appraisal, or I'm not going to get this and all this stuff. Then you've now you're down to 270, and then let's start from there and see if it's a good deal.
Right.
But if they do want some cash for their equity, let's say they wanted 50,000, and you just save them 30. Okay. Then let's say, okay, well, we'll give you 20,000, but I can't pay you that all at one time. Let me pay you monthly, because that now puts the seller in that second lien position. You have a secondary note to the seller. So you're paying the mortgage, and then you're paying the seller. But you have to then again make sure that your numbers, like you're still going to cash flow and be able to get that property rented for an amount now more than the rent, the mortgage, and that second payment to the seller. So
well, the other thing you also need to look and see, are there any repairs that need to be done? How much is?
That's a whole new can of worms.
Oh yeah, you can negotiate everything. I mean, I know it's not really what I'm doing with my business, but as part of our training is to help and to make every deal a good deal.
Yep.
And it just, you have to do your numbers in any situation, subject to anything. You have to do your numbers and you have to work with people. The best thing is you will have some people on standby when you do this, that you have a contractor on standby, maybe foundation, maybe a roofer, or somebody who is really experienced, who can really walk with you through the building and say, it's a good deal, it's not a good deal, because you could miss something and then you're going to be stuck with stuff.
And I'll tell you, I know that, central air and heat used to be about $5,000 to install a 4-ton air conditioner for let's say we did a 2,000 square foot, 2-story house that was 1,800 square feet and was $5,000.
Right.
Never had, we weren't replacing, we were installing the initial installation. The house was old. It had window units and wall heaters. And that's no longer the price for central air and heat. And when we were looking at getting, let me turn my ringer off. When we were looking at getting central air and heat installed in that little 1,100 square foot house over in East Texas, our bids ranged anywhere from 8,000 to 18,000. They were they were all over the place. It was absolutely crazy, and they were all giving us the same thing. And so then we started hearing about these mini splits that you can do, and that was really interesting to me. And it was much less; it was around $3,000. So, and I'm not sure if that's installation or laborers. I don't know, like doing it yourself. I don't know. I obviously couldn't do it myself. I would have to pay somebody to do it. But there's. Let's talk a little bit about that. Don't let me forget to get back to the different types of loans and what you're looking for on loans. But, when I am estimating a rehab here in Plano, you're estimating a rehab in Wichita Falls or Denton, or I'm estimating a rehab for one of my properties in East Texas. The numbers can be astronomically different.
Oh, yes.
I mean, astronomically different. So you always want to make sure that you run your own numbers. You can do a rough estimate based on your experience and what you think it should cost, but then you need to also have an actual contractor, preferably the one that you intend to use or are considering using. Let's say you're just getting started and you want to get 3 bids. So we always recommend in your whole life, you're always recommended to get a second opinion, a third opinion. But I like 3s, and until you get someone that you feel comfortable with. And then make sure you check their references, because they could be the guy that runs off with all your money. I've seen many an early investor, new investor, give a contractor, stroke them a check, and say, "See you tomorrow," and they never hear from them again. And
they need to fly to Hawaii or to Mexico and see him again.
It's absolutely terrible. Yeah. But okay, so let's say you've got your property and you went and looked at it and you've gotten your own repair estimate. Then you need to get professionals or whoever. If you're gonna do the deal yourself, if you're gonna be your own general contractor, then you need to get all your subs in there. Hey, Mr. Flooring guy, how much are you going to charge me to replace all this flooring? And what kind of flooring are we going to do? Because different flooring is different prices.
And you don't want to put in $100,000 house tile. I mean, you don't want to do that. That's too expensive. I mean, you really want to be cost efficient, and you're going to see what is running in the neighborhood, what the other neighbors have.
Yeah, because and what the other flips are doing. If you're doing a flip, you need to be doing something similar, or maybe a little bit level higher than what your competition is doing. If you wanted to sell, you can't go in and look. When we were doing comps, we look at comps and we say, okay, this is my house. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath ranch style house. Okay. You take out all the ones that are 2-story. You take all the ones that are modern. You take all the ones that if yours doesn't have a pool, you take out all the ones that have a pool. And you try to find properties that are similar to yours as close as possible. Right. And then you need to look at the interior. What kind of finishes did they do? Did they do all stainless steel and not chrome? What is that? Is it brushed nickel?
Brushed nickel.
Yeah, brushed nickel. So if they did that, then you can't go in and keep your ugly 1970s hardware. You're going to have to replace the hardware. Do you know how expensive hardware is? It's not. It is cheap when you think about how much per piece it is. But how many pieces do you have? I mean, we did one time. I bet we spent $300 on just the hardware, and that it was crazy. And then that's when you start to learn things like buying in bulk on Amazon, buying in bulk from manufacturers, things like that. So, but anyway, so then you get you walk through with your contractor and you say, okay, this is my flooring, hardwood floors, for example. For God's sake, if you can save the hardwood floors, save the hardwood floors. Yes, it costs some money to redo them, but wow, like when absolutely beautiful, stunning. Um, but then you have to say, okay, hey, so and so, how much is it going to cost to refinish my hardwood floors? I've got a hardwood floor guy on my phone in East Texas and North Texas. Like I know who to call for that because I've used them enough. I trust them enough. The one in North Texas occasionally retires and then goes off and does something else. But I'm like, can you do it? Can you please do this one? You can do it on a weekend. But and listen to the contractor. What is their doing? You don't want to go in and say, okay, have this $100,000 house. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and all my comps are, but puts it about $100,000. I'm getting it for this great price. Now let's go in and do as cheap a possible rehab as we can. No, that's not what you're doing. I mean, if you're keeping it as a rental, and you are hoping to refinance that at some point, I don't mean go in and put in granite if it's not required, if it's not necessary because the comps didn't have it, but it needs to be comparable to what the other properties that you determined your ARV to be. Right. It needs to be somewhere around that. If you're going to be refinancing it, if you go in and buy a house that the ARV is 100,000, you don't do any work to it, and then your tenant moves out and you go to refinance it or to sell it, you're not going to get that because you didn't do the repairs to get you to that. Right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
You can always buy the tallest and most expensive house on the block. I mean, that's not going to be very, I mean, that's what I heard. I mean, from the real estate side, I think as a realtor, I'm not a realtor.
I'm not a realtor.
And I'm not a CPA. I'm not a lawyer, nothing like that.
Nope.
It's just you have to really know what you're doing when you do it. And you really, like I said, always say, you need training. And if you have the right training that you can rely on, it makes a huge difference. It saves you money on the long end. I think if you have a good trainer, I mean, Real Impact has some really awesome trainers, and Karen is one of them.
Gabi is one of them.
The thing is, we can save you a lot of money. We really can. And it saves you money on the deal. It saves you money on the loan. Actually, the 100.
The 100% loan.
Yeah. It happened because I mentioned to my account executive that some of the clients have been in training. If they're in training, we're just going to use that knowledge that they have the training, and we use the trainer, the mentor, as to support the whole deal. I mean, that's the benefit, and I mean, so they can get an 100% financing, they can do this, and it's just it really makes a difference if you have somebody you can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need help."
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, I have been through some coaching in the past myself with Tim, and because we were trying to educate us more and more, but you know what? They wouldn't pick up the phone.
Yeah,
and we had a question, or they would not. They promised the whole world. That's why the reason we signed up. And what happened? They didn't come through. It was a waste of $16,000 right there on the spot. Okay, and it's not worth it. You need to have somebody that you can pick up the phone, that you can call, that you can ask the questions, that you can do the work with. They will walk you through the neighborhood. They will do everything with you because they train you how to do it. Makes a world of a difference. Believe me, yes.
So, I look at it like this, like it's like hand holding. I teach you how to do something, you go do it, and then you come back to me and we go over it.
Right.
Okay. It's just like at school. When you were in school, you were taught how to do this math equation,
Right.
and then you did it in class, and then you went home and you did it for homework, and then the next day you should be able to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but that's the thing with real estate investing, there are so many different nuances to it. It's like, um, when we're researching a deal, when we first start our due diligence, if I get an email that comes into if I get an email blast, if I get a deal sent to me in my email, I look at it. If number one, the subject line gets me to open it, and I would really like to see people putting the city in the email in the subject line. That way, I know if I see one that says Plano, I'm going to click on that. Okay. If it has the address in the subject line, I may not catch. I mean, because your subject line is only this long, and if you put hot deal at 123 Main Street, Plano, Texas, and now it's off. Now the address is off my screen, and if
Right.
I don't see it that it says Plano, then I won't open. I may not open it. But I watch for the cities that I'm looking to invest in. That's the number one thing. Then I open the email and then I'm looking for, okay, how much are you asking for it? And what is your estimated after repair value, ARV? If it looks good on your end, I'm going to then go in and look at it and verify. So the first thing I do is pull out my calculator and calculate 70% of that price.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's in DFW, of course, it's typically 80%. But if it's over in East Texas, it's 70%, sometimes 60%. So if those numbers work for that, according to what the wholesaler has sent me, then I will do my own due diligence. And then I'll plug it into my CRM. I will run the comps. I will put in my estimated ARV. And if you're way off, then I will, and if I'm still interested, then I will email them back and say, hey, I'm showing the ARV being 180 and you've got it at 240. Can you send me your comps so that I can verify like where the mistake was made? And typically they'll come back and say, well, that was just our best estimation. Okay. Then that right there shows me that wholesaler doesn't know what they're doing. So then I will stop opening their emails, or sometime I will unsubscribe to their emails because it's not doing me any good. If you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to wholesale me a deal, no, you didn't buy it right. And then you tried to make the numbers work, and that doesn't work for me. And I don't want to have to do your homework. So then I will send them back mine and say, well, these are mine. These are actual comps. This is what I came up with. Can you go back and negotiate with your seller? And if you can get it to me for this price, then I'll look at it again.
And the thing is, not everything is a good deal, what comes through. I mean, I remember I talked to one of my clients the other day, and I said, how do you get to your numbers? I mean, we went back through some numbers and everything else. And I said, if he doesn't come down on the price, then it's not a good deal. Then the next opportunity is waiting around the corner. And that means no, next opportunity. And oh, no, to this one. And you just be patient on it. And I noticed some of the wholesalers, they might be a little bit pushing. And then I don't know what to.
Did you get my message? I'm saying that you're frozen. On my end, you're frozen. You might want to stop your camera and then restart it.
Stop my camera and not start. I don't know how to do that. Stop cam. Okay.
Yep, there you go. Now.
Is that better?
Nope, you're still frozen. It's so interesting.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. I just can't see you. But anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Continue
But the thing is, make sure that you really do your job diligently. You really have to. If you cannot do it, then walk away from it. And not every deal is a good deal.
Don't try to make a deal work. You cannot fit a square peg in a round hole. there's always going to be another deal. And the more you try to make a deal work, the worse it's going to turn out in the long run.
But the thing is also sometimes you may have to move the box, like if it's a box and you have the box maybe the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you may have to flip the box around to see if it fit. But you cannot force it in one way. You have to see it from different perspective.
Yes.
You see it from different perspective, then it's gonna work.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not. And
that's what, whenever, if you can call your mentor or, someone, your partner, your mentor, someone, and say, okay, this is the situation. This is what's going on. And then talk it out. Sometimes oftentimes they can bring in a solution to solve that problem.
right.
And or give you a couple of options. I know, that's happened with me a lot. I mean, like you and I talk every morning, and sometimes we're mid conversation and you're like, oh gosh, yes, that's what I need to do. I'm going to do that. I'll call you back. And then, or I'm in the middle of the conversation with you and I'm like, oh, Gabi, that's exactly what I need to do. Let me call you back. Because if we talk through a problem, then you can bring a solution. Like you're so good at coming up with a solution because you know so many of your products, and you can say, okay, Karen, yeah, we could do that with, we have a program that does short-term rental loans, or we have a program that does the 100% financing, 100% rehab for single family homes that are fix and flips. It won't work if you're going to do buy and hold unless you do this first and then transfer it over to a buy and hold. So how does that work, Gabi?
Oh, when you have a fix and flip, and then you're gonna refinance the fix and flip out, and then we're gonna look for the right program. I always recommend that you do have a tenant already in there in contract, as much as possible, because you can dictate how much rent you're gonna get.
What is the seasoning usually for your loans?
6 months, I think. Yeah, 6 months.
Not for most of them, right?
6 months, yeah.
So, Gabi, what would happen if you bought a property for a fix and flip, and then you didn't do the repairs that you anticipated doing, and then your house doesn't appraise at whenever you go to refi it?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, you committed fraud. Okay.
Well, I mean, okay. Okay? I have a property and I run out of funds and I decide to, let's say I run into a big problem and I need to replace the electrical and I need to.
Okay, that's different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I run out of funds and I don't get to do everything that I intend to do. And now I'm at the point where I've got to refinance it or come up with the money to continue the rehab. Like you're in a pickle at that point.
You're going to be in a pickle. Yes, you're going to be in a serious pickle. What you would have to do is you're going to have to find the money to finish up the work, and don't hide it. Don't just put the head in the sand and say,
don't hide from it. Don't ignore it. You've got to you got to find the money and finish it, or you've got to drop your price. So now maybe you can't buy it. Maybe you can't refinance it and hold it because you ran out of money. And go ahead.
That's why you do your job upfront diligently. Things can always come up. Sometimes, I mean, we had one house that we had the roof inspected, but the roof didn't pass. I mean, the roof was bad, and so we had to replace the whole roof. And yes, it cut in our profit.
Yep.
And it was not a good deal in that moment. But you know what? The thing is, we still were able to sell the property. Sometimes, if the roof is not leaking, then you can just see how you can fix it as much as possible that it is safe and sound. If it's just a roof, let's say there's just a roof.
Yeah.
Then you might be able to sell it to somebody else and say, hey, I'm gonna give you a deal. This is how much I need for the deal to be, that's why we have our impact meetings that you can talk about that.
Yes.
Some people, sometimes if you sell it, you can maybe sell it and you have enough money in your room. I mean, a little bit money that you can make that is your profit.
Oh, you're back. Your video's working now.
Oh, I'm back. Okay, I guess my internet is better. Then you can maybe talk to the roofer and say, hey, can you get the roof done? Or and then we can get you paid out of closing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your profit is out the window, but on the other hand, at least you didn't foreclose or something like that. Sometimes you
Yes.
can extend the loan. I mean, for a little bit, and if you like need another 3 months, you can ask if you can get an extension. There's always sometimes possible. I mean, I think investor loans are friendly enough that they will extend if you need it, but it is open communication. And
Yes.
if you talk to them and say, hey, I had this issue, but I do have enough, that's why we go for 75 ARV.
Yeah. For
It
the loan.
gives for the loan, it gives you still the bigger room that there is in case something happens.
Right. Right.
I mean, if you need to get the house rewired, you may need to really talk to some people and come to those meetings and say, hey, I need help.
Right.
And somebody will have a solution in our meetings to help you out.
There's Mr. Tyler.
Oh, there he is.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, but that's a big thing. Communication is extremely important.
Right. So when you are doing your initial due diligence, you need to have some general idea of what condition the house is in. If
Hmm.
they say it needs a full rehab, it needs a full rehab. If
Yeah.
they say, oh, there's nothing wrong with it, I did all the work myself, it now needs a full rehab. It now needs a full rehab. But then you have your little, what I call my rough estimate of repairs, and I base that on the square foot. And then
Yeah.
I go back in, then I go see the property, and then I make notes of everything. But if I'm really serious about, if I know before I go see the property that I really want to take this one seriously, this is what I want to make an offer on, this is what I would love to do, then I'm going to have my team on standby. I'm gonna call everybody that I might need and say, okay, I'm going to look at a house today. Can you meet me there? Can you check out the air conditioning? Is the electricity on?
Yeah. The
So then,
water.
yeah, exactly. And then I'm gonna have, my finish guy. I'm gonna have my GC, whoever I'm gonna need on this project. I'm gonna say, can you meet me there? And then if they can't, then I'm gonna make sure that I get them what they need. I'm gonna get the picture of the serial number for the air conditioner. I'm gonna get the information off of the side of the hot water heater. Um, I'm going to take really good pictures, and I may even make a video, or I may video chat with them and say, hey, can you tell me anything about this? What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on these floors? If it's a really rough wood floor, maybe it can't be refinished. So what are our options, and what do my comps show? Did they do tile in the wet areas, or did they do LVP throughout the property? I personally love the same flooring throughout. I can't stand floor transitions to something else. But if it's tile and carpet, obviously, that would make sense. But
It needs to look right.
exactly, it needs to look
If it
right.
doesn't look, if you don't think about it in one way, would you rent the place for the money that you're gonna ask for?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of saying, okay, sometimes if you live in a $500,000 house and you buy a $50,000 house, it might be a little bit off, but you still need to be comfortable enough to
Right.
say, okay, I'm fair enough to do that.
Exactly.
And that's the most important thing.
Yep. So then you're to the point where you've gotten your contractors to look at the property,
Hmm.
and then you've got to put the written bid together. Okay. And then you got to add all that up. You can be $10,000 to $20,000 off. I mean, especially like per area. Like
Hmm.
if all three of us have the same like kind property in our 3 different areas, we can come up with a completely different estimate of repairs or bids for repairs. And then the actuality of it may be higher or lower than that. But
Right.
that is the whole point of knowing what you're doing and choosing the right people to work with, making the right choice. So if you're thinking oh, this house needs $50,000 worth of work, and then you go and run your numbers and you say, oh, I only qualify for this much, so I need to shade that down, and now my repairs are only $40,000. Does that $10,000 in repairs just magically heal themselves? No, you're setting yourself up for failure from the beginning. So then that's when you have to say, Mr. Seller, I have just gotten my total for all the repairs that your property needs. It actually needs $10,000 more than what I originally anticipated. So I'm going to need to reduce the purchase price. I need to come down on that because and send it to them. This is what, this is the estimate of repairs. And remember, this is not your, like if you're going to go out and do it yourself, but if you were having to pay someone to do it, I love to go in and demo. If I don't have to pay somebody to do it, I can break up ceramic tile flooring. Always wear your goggles, guys. Safety glasses. But if you're going to try to save money and do the work yourself and then present that to the seller, then that's not going to be very negotiable. You're not going to be negotiated to your full extent. How much would you pay if you were paying an outsider to do it? Because I can tell you, when you run out of money, you've shot yourself in the foot. So,
well, that's and that happens in the beginning. Happens a lot, and that's why you need somebody on your team who is more experienced.
That's right. That's right. Well, Tyler, how are you? Oh, you're on mute. Or I can't hear you.
He likes to mute himself.
I think he has this trouble every week. Whenever he gets on, he has trouble with his. I think it has something to do with his headset. Can't hear you.
Testing.
There you are.
Hey, there we are.
I don't know what it is. StreamYard's the only one I have issues with this. It defaults to the wrong mic for some reason.
Right. So how are things going on your end?
Things are going fantastic. I'm going through, still getting some of that infrastructure set up in place. I've started using this new app called Notion to sync with a lot of my notes and tasks.
Called what?
It's called Notion.
Notion?
Mm-hmm. And then I can start using it for also being more transparent with people that I work with. So issues that come up, tasks that come up, I can show progress that's being done there, and essentially create what would be a client portal to assist with some of that transparency. So I'm very excited to get into it.
It's a messaging app or just a note-taking app?
It's a note-taking, documentation, project management app.
That's what you're creating or you're using?
It's something I'm using.
Okay. You need to send me that link so I can download it.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. And thank you for trying to help my son. I'm going to make the connection between you both and see how you guys can. I don't know what he needs. He just told me I need an IT guy that I can interview, that can do an interview with me to see if I can get a job, because that's part of MSU that they are requiring.
Okay.
So maybe something working out in the future. I mean, he's a pretty smart kid, but, he has his flaws.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Especially if he needs feedback on anything, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, he's working with Aiden on some projects. So on an internship program. So, but I don't know if that's going to work out for the future or not. And so we have some other things in place for him. But I thought, you might be a really good person to practice on this part, because you have a lot of knowledge and I trust you on that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being thought of.
Well, I was thinking hard on who I would send him to, So, and I said, Tyler is a really good person, and he's smart in that subject lines, and he can open up some doors for you, and you can open up some doors for him. I mean, it's all who do you know, you know?
Absolutely is. My last 3 jobs, I think I've gotten because of people I know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just getting into the door is the hardest thing out of any job.
Right.
You know, but a personal recommendation goes so much further than seeing something on a screen.
Hmm.
You know, and when you're sifting through hundreds or thousands of applications or resumes or emails, it's really hard to stick out for one person to stand out. But if you get that personal recommendation, like if you and the person that's recommending them really knows what you do and how they can help you, I think it's great. I think it's great.
It
I'm
is.
just back and
Absolutely.
I'm beginning to wonder if my air conditioning is on. I'm so cold. So Tyler, I sent you an email about the skip tracing company that I use and connecting them with Podio. He said, we don't do that. His literal words were, we don't do that, but we do have an API. What was the word anyway, like instruction, or not API instruction, but like a booklet or pamphlet, something. He sent me something. I didn't even open it. I just said, thank you. And I forwarded it to you. And that's what I told him I was going to do. I said, well, as soon as you say API, that my brain just goes, I know that's a Tyler thing. So I sent that over to you to see if we could use that for what we have coming up or what we're using now. And remember the person that bought the subject to workspace back last year?
Mm-hmm.
She's decided I just in my brain, I was about to say roast beef. She just decided roast beef's no longer her. She just decided real estate is not her thing, so she's doing something else. So
Okay.
the non-usage of that site. So I was thinking about asking her if she wanted to sell it and maybe sell it to somebody else that wants it. So anyway, so I forgot what I was going to say. So, Tyler, before you joined us, we were talking about the importance of running your own numbers and getting good estimates of repairs so that you don't go over your budget or are not able to refinance your property for the amount that you thought you were going to, because you can't get out of a loan that you can't finance.
Absolutely.
And how, yes, you can get houses with no money and no credit, but not every house qualifies for no money and no credit. And so we were just going over the different things on that, because a lot of people, people that are trying to buy a house subject to, and there's not even a mortgage, or trying to go, we were talking about Gabi's new 100% financing and 100%. Her new program will do 100% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab in exchange for 25% of the profit. So the lender gets 25% of your profit. They become a partner. And so there are people that don't want to do that. And I'm like, why would you not? Like, I mean, if you got the money, then you wouldn't be looking for funding. So if and then trying to buy sub 2, but yet she's not wanting to sell it sub 2, like if they say no and you still want the house, then you got to do a plan B. You can't keep going back to plan A.
Yep.
I mean,
I think it's really important that you keep in mind that you're not always looking for a home run. Sometimes you're just looking for that base hit. Sometimes getting a little smaller piece of the pie is better than getting no pie at all, right?
Or get it. Yeah, you didn't even make it to the stadium.
Right. Exactly.
You didn't even get to play in the game. So if you don't make offers and you don't get an offer, you don't ever do a deal, then you're never even getting to the game. And then if you don't have the right team members on your team, then you may not win. But like you said, you can get to first base, you can hit a home run, but what about the team? Just because you hit a home run doesn't mean your team wins. The team can still lose.
Mm-hmm.
But that's great. That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's extremely important as well that you mentioned having all your numbers on your own, doing your own numbers. A lot of wholesalers, if you're buying from a wholesaler, don't know how to run their own numbers.
Right.
And then in addition to that, everyone's incentivized, whether they intend to or not, to give you lower numbers than you would otherwise realistically run into. It's really easy to be looking at your house that you're trying to sell and justify, well, they don't really need to fix that. They don't really need to go all out on this particular fix. And so they'll give you a lower number than what would be realistic for you to get to your goals. So
Right.
extremely important to be running your own numbers on that.
And I think that's actually right where you came in today, where you joined us, was we were talking about, yes, run your own numbers, but don't try to make a deal fit. Don't try to say, oh, well, this house is 2 miles away, but its ARV is way up here. I'm going to use that one instead of the 3 that are right here beside it that are
Yep.
clearly showing it's worth 120. I'm going to pick this one over here that's worth 180, that sold for 180. We're going to go with 180. That's not the way it works. That's trying to make something work. I don't know how many different ways I was taught to run comps, but it all comes down to this: same, as close as possible in the most immediate area. And I always start off at a quarter mile or in that same neighborhood. I love them when they're on the same street. That makes it so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at the map. I look at everything. I look at the map and I say, okay, where are these properties located? Oh, look, there's a major highway, and this one is below the major highway. That's my best comp, but I'm not using it because it's across a major highway. It's not going to be a comp. So then I have to come back inside and look again. And that was the first thing I have looked at so many comps. I can look at things, what I call the bird's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
And I look through at all my numbers, the way I teach people to do it. And I can recognize an error like almost immediately. And I can go in and look at it, and I can almost automatically find, because if they did it the way I taught them to, I can go in and look at exactly how they came up with it. And I say, oh, this property right here has a swimming pool. Ours does not. That's why this one makes the numbers so out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate, it drives me nuts when a rehab sells for, like, they undersold it, and their rehab comp is now coming up on my low comps. It should be on my high comps because it's a rehab. It really kills me because I'm like, oh, y'all, you missed the boat on that one. Like, who was your realtor? But anyway, I mean, because sometimes it's like a previous agreement, like somebody came in and they're like, oh yeah, I'll sell it to you for $199 when they could have sold for $230 or $280, $250 or whatever. But but I do see that sometimes because you open the low comps expecting them to need a full rehab, and it's been fully remodeled, and it kills me. But
yeah, and being able to do comps is a real skill on its own.
Yeah.
Understanding your market that you're working with, understanding the geography of how people value these properties. For example, for pools, you can have a market for pools where you're on a waiting list for 16 months to get your pool installed.
Yeah.
That makes a house with a pool way more valuable than it would have otherwise.
Yes.
Or depending on where you are, your school districts can completely change the way that your house is valued.
Yeah.
Looking at the difference between South Lake and Grapevine, for example, huge difference just crossing the school district border.
Yeah. And it's important that when you're learning your farm area or where you're trying to invest, that you know these things. What if you bought, well, I don't think that people are doing many rehabs or investment properties in South Lake, but let's say you bought a property that you thought was in South Lake, but it was actually in Grapevine. And you spent all that money and you didn't do your research. And then when you come to list it, they say, oh, well, you can't get that because your property's in Grapevine ISD. That would be killer. We looked at one yesterday that was in Bishop Arts. Is it Bishop Arts? Yes.
Yes.
I always want to say Bishop's Art. So Bishop Arts, and it was not in Bishop Arts. It was, half a mile away, but it wasn't in the hustle and bustle. It wasn't as highly sought after as Bishop Arts. And so if we hadn't have looked at that, then we would have wasted a lot of time and a lot of people's we would have wasted a lot of people's time, because I had people that were going to go out there with us and look at it, and I canceled it because I said, oh, it's not where it was supposed to be. And I guess a lot of people probably wouldn't, they may not even look at it. They may just take that person's word for it, I guess. I mean,
when you're first starting out, it's easy to do that. As an experienced investor, you're more likely to go out and check it and verify, double check all those stuff. But as a new investor, you're being overwhelmed with all the other stuff going on, and you're more likely to make that mistake and just take their word. Oh yeah, they wouldn't lie to me on that. Or even if it's not a lie and they're just an honest mistake is what it could be.
An honest mistake. Yeah. So that's really funny, because that is exactly what got me to open the email. So now I'm going to be more cautious when that person sends me an email. I'm going to go back and relook at everything that they sent me. If they get me to open the email, if they catch me with Plano and I open it and then it's not what they say, then I'll know. I mean, like, what if it was in Fairview versus Allen?
Yep.
There's
huge difference.
Or McKinney versus Fairview, or McKinney versus Prosper. I mean, every city has its own dynamic, I guess, if you will.
Absolutely.
And different neighborhoods within that city can have a different, like, I know there's parts of Princeton that people don't want to live in. And I'm like, it's tiny. Like, how could there be a bad area? There's a bad area. Sorry, Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
Truth. But whenever I'm reading on the app, I'm like, crime here, crime here, crime. I'm like, wow, I'm glad I didn't move there. I had someone that was from here said, oh, you want to be here, not here.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point that you're bringing up, is the crime area.
Mm-hmm.
Go and do your own research on the crime area. You don't want to buy an investment that's not in a good neighborhood that you cannot sell.
Or that you're going to get your tools stolen from. You're going to get your appliances stolen from. I don't remember who it was. Someone on my Facebook had their appliances stolen twice.
Yeah, you find it almost in every neighborhood, I guess. But you have to be more cautious in certain neighborhoods, and that's why there's a police report that you can download every day, and you can look it up, and then you can see what is a good neighborhood and what is not. I think it's LexisNexis, something that I just get emails from suddenly out of the blue. And, it's kind of interesting to see. And you never know. Like this morning when I was driving, I'm like, oh, there's somebody laying in the medium with a bag. So I did call it in. So I don't know what it was. If it was just two bags, but this one person kind of looked like the one thing looked like.
The person was asleep on the median this morning, so she.
So I did call it into the non-emergency number, and I don't know. I haven't seen anything coming through yet. I did call my friend at the police department, but he didn't answer the phone. He hasn't called me back either. So, which is okay. I don't need to know, but I just want to make sure that nobody's hurt, because I do care, and I know that neighborhood up there is kind of on the verge of not being so good that I'm driving through,
Right.
But I'm just driving through. I'm not sticking. She said, did you? And I said, no, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe. So it's on recording. I didn't feel safe to get out of the car and check on it. And so that's the right thing to do. But you need to check the police report. I think that's really important.
Yeah, you want to, especially whenever
if it's a good neighborhood or not.
Yeah,
that's steering.
So your market, right? Up in Wichita Falls, Gabby, you already know the areas you don't want to be in.
Kind of, sort of, but I still look it up.
Right.
Because they move around too, so you always want to be on top of it.
Yeah. And Tyler, are you still doing some real estate investing, or are you focusing on
At the moment, I'm focusing on the
IT
market
side of
rate
things.
solutions and IT side of things, but I'm still working to stay educated on how the market's developing, working to stay within the network here, because I'm not going to be, doing this. Uh, Once this starts to take off, I'm going to be coming back to doing the real estate investing, and I want to be able to jump right into it. I don't want to have to re-educate myself on what's going on in the market, re-educate myself on what the latest trends are. Um, I want to be able to utilize the network that I'm building and continuing to build, and be able to invest in property of my own.
So, when I stopped investing for the 2 years that I stopped, I was continuing to use my network and utilize the software, all the different softwares that I was using for what I was doing, which is similar to what you're doing, in that it's support for real estate investors or people that need our help, right?
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I had to stay on top of what they were using and to make their life easier. And that's the one thing that gets so frustrating to people is when you pay for this service and 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 this service, and then, but I've got to have it. I've got to have it. I've got to have it. And then you don't do a deal for 3 months, you can sink your own ship and then you're out of money.
Absolutely.
And, that's the one thing I hate when I see people throwing money away, buying list, and they send out a piece of direct mail and they say, oh, that didn't work.
Yep.
And then they go
Seven-
buy another list and they do the
seven-
same thing over. I'm like, no, go back to that list. If you bought a good list, if you really identified your farm area, where are the other cash buyers buying? Let's do that first. Oh, speaking of, Tyler, do you know how to do a pivot table?
I have done a pivot table before.
Okay. So maybe
What?
not on this call. We could do after this call, if you have time, we could look at a pivot table that I started a week and a half ago. I
Okay.
downloaded the data. But then I was working on it, but it's been like 2 years since I've done it. And I'm like, I do not remember anything about how to do what I'm doing. So I've got the data, I've got it in the table, and I've got certain things, but I'm trying to identify 2 different farm areas for 2 different people. So maybe we can do that. But anyway,
Absolutely.
so when you're identifying, so if you go back, what was I saying? Identify your farm area. Oh,
The list. You need 7 touches.
Oh yeah, that's right. So if you bought a good list and it's in your farm area and you know that that is an area that cash buyers are buying, and why is that important? If cash buyers are buying in an area, then you know that you as a wholesaler can go in and find properties below wholesale and then sell them to investors, or that's where the other flippers are flipping.
Yep.
So that's why it's important to identify your farm area. You can't just say, you know what, I really like all these houses over here in Wiley, Texas. I think I'll invest in Wiley, Texas. No, the numbers don't work over there. They don't. The rents you won't be cash flowing if you're keeping a rental property. But yeah, if you can find a property for a cheap price that you could flip and resell, that would work. But anyway, that's why whenever we're Gavi, your face is frozen, like you were saying, what she just said. She's been having some frozen camera issues this morning. But anyway, so that's why it's so important that if you bought the list, if you honed in on the right list, that you not only reach out to them once and in one way. I send out a ringless voicemail, a text blast, direct mail, and then I cold call. I don't start with cold calling. I do my quick, easy, like I want to get a hold of my seller as fast as possible.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For them to say yes or no. And if I don't reach them on the phone, then or if they don't answer my call, then I'm going to send them a text. They don't answer my text, they're going to get a direct mail piece. But if they tell me no in these 2 instances, which I get the most response from.
Correspondence.
So if I get responses on the 2 fast, cheap, I can literally get those done within an hour of getting the list skip traced. I can have ringless voicemail sent out, and then a text blast sent out. Both like that. Direct mail, on the other hand, takes a little longer. I have to order it. They have to create it. They have to mail it. It has to be delivered. And then they have to respond. And everybody else that's sending out direct mail, they're all getting theirs too. So mine has to stick out amongst all the mail. So then that's one touch. I mean, yes, it's actually 4, but I consider it one touch. I've attempted to contact them once, even though it was 4. And then I'll send another one. And then but let's say on that phone call, it's a disconnected number. I'm not going to skip trade. I'm not going to text it, because that's a disconnected number. Why would I send a text to a disconnected number? So now I'm weeding out my ways of being able to contact them.
Right.
Yep.
Then I know, okay, this one said no. I'm going to take them off my list. I'm not going to waste my money on it, because then there are people that will say, I don't take them off the list. Life is too short to deal with people that don't want to hear from you. I don't want to keep bothering this person. And does that mean they're not going to show up on a list in the future? Probably so. But I want to get the ones that I want them to tell me no, so I can focus on the ones that will tell me yes.
Yep.
And those are the ones I'm going to direct mail to. And if I don't put them on DNC, they're going to get even more irritated next time I call back, or report me, or I'm going to waste my money sending out direct mail. So I just DNC it, guys. I mean, and that's, in my opinion, that's how I do it. If they say, take me off your list, no, I don't want to sell. I do tell them, if anything changes in the future, please give me a call back. And if I'm still buying at that time in that area, I'm happy to look at it again.
Yep. And I think it's really important to put them on the DNC. I would not make that a personal policy, but just something that would be a company-wide policy, something you want to do regardless, because legally speaking, the moment that they say, please take me off your list, you have to do that.
Exactly.
They may not be on the national do not call list or the state do not call list, but if you're making calls and text messages, you're legally required to keep your own do not call list separate from both of those.
Exactly. So, whenever I set up Roar to connect with my Podio, that was the one reason why I didn't like using some of the other text blasting software, was some of them did not allow you to export your data. So if I sent out 1,000 text messages and 775 of those said, do not call, stop, whatever, we would have to go in and copy that number and paste it in our system, and then go in and mark it DNC one at a time. So what I did was I said, okay, if we can't export this, we have to find one that we can. So Roar, you can export that list. But I paid for a guy to connect it with an app within Podio to automate it. So we would go in and set it up in Roar and start it. And then all the replies would come into Podio. So then I took what he had set up we would read it. I took what he had set up and I said, okay, if they say stop, if that's their reply, then I'm going to push a button that says DNC. And then it would automatically, that was his automation. You push DNC and then it would block them and Roar and mark it on your list that you had marked it DNC. Well, then I went one step further and said, okay, if they say DNC or stop, then I want it to go find that phone number in my system on my list and mark it DNC. And it saved me a step, because now I didn't have to. I could literally send out a text blast, and all the way through was automated, so that they were all the replies were in one place. Somebody had to read the replies and say, okay, DNC, that one's easy. Oh, this one might want to sell, or they might be being a total jerk and being facetious, but that's for a lead manager to look at. So I had my VA mark them, and then I would go in and read all the ones that were marked and say, okay, I want to talk to this person. Oh yeah, this guy. Yeah. Yes, I will, for $1 million. Okay. That's not in my buying criteria, but how did he get on my list? My list was not targeted. You cannot throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. That's not what real estate investing is about. Oh shoot, it's 105. So sorry.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's enough for today. Thank you all for joining us. Tyler, if you're free now to hang out, I'll stop this and then we can continue on with the pivot table.
And I will send you Timmy's number. I'm gonna double somehow and get you the information over. Okay.
Okay. I can do both.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Thank y'all for joining. Oh, Gabby's gone. Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast. See you next Wednesday. Oh, by the way, this weekend, Saturday, April 1st, no fooling. We have Tristan Pham coming to talk to Real Impact Plano about what it takes to be a landlord. And let me tell you, if you don't follow this guy on Facebook, he has some crazy, crazy stories. He's seen a lot of crazy stuff. So if you, it's a free meeting. It's 9:30 to noon at Quest Trust in Addison. If you need the address, y'all have my phone number or email address or whatever. You can find it on Meetup. You can find it on realimpactplano.com. You can find it on realimpacttraining.com. So I hope that you're following me on Meetup or you're part of the group on Meetup, and we hope to see you there Saturday. Okay. And otherwise, we'll see you next Wednesday for pie.